How far would you go to buy freedom? That question echoed in his head the night he made his first million. Elias was only 27. Sharp suit, sharper mind, and eyes that glittered with the hunger of a generation raised on make it fast or get left behind. He had built a trading app from his apartment, fueled by caffeine and chaos. He'd cracked the code of the markets, or so he thought. In the glow of his monitors, money felt like magic, zeros dancing into existence at the click of a key. Each spike on a chart felt like destiny answering him directly. He didn't sleep. He invested time. He didn't talk to friends. He networked. He didn't rest. He scaled. His mother would call from their old house on the outskirts of the city. Open quote, "Elias, you sound tired." "I'm fine, Mama. I'm almost there." Close quote. Almost where? He never knew. Only that every success made the silence inside him louder. Soon came luxury, penthouse views, imported watches, followers calling him the money whisperer. He smiled on camera, but at night he stared out at the skyline and whispered to himself, open quote, "What if it's never enough?" Close quote. That question, small, poisonous, began to grow roots. One night, an investor offered him a deal too good to refuse. Double his capital in half the time. The only catch, risk everything. He hesitated. For a moment, a whisper of his father's voice, a man who'd worked 40 years in quiet dignity, crossed his memory. Open quote, "Son, money's a mirror. It shows you what you worship." Close quote. Elias smirked. "I worship success." And he signed. The next morning, the city looked brighter, the world wider, and his future unstoppable. But the first crack in his empire had already formed. At first, everything soared. Numbers rose. His investors praised him like a prophet. Then one algorithmic failure, one miscalculated update, one night when the market turned while he slept. By dawn, millions evaporated. Notifications flooded in like alarms in a burning building. He tried to fix it. Desperate clicks, frantic calls, but panic is the enemy of precision. Within hours, his company's servers crashed. Investors pulled out, and news headlines branded him the reckless prodigy. His phone rang nonstop, reporters, clients, and finally his mother. Open quote, "Elias, come home." "I can fix it, Mama. Sometimes fixing means stopping." Close quote. But he couldn't stop. He sold everything left, chasing one last miracle trade, the move that would redeem him. It didn't. The market collapsed again. His last $100,000 dissolved in seconds. Then came silence. The apartment emptied. First the furniture, then the friends. His luxury car vanished under the weight of debt collectors. His own reflection began to look like a stranger wearing regret. He walked through the city that once bowed to him, now just another man in a worn-out coat, clutching his phone like a relic from a past life. One night, in a cheap diner, he overheard two young men talking of him. Open quote, "Remember that app guy? Lost everything. Greedy fool." Close quote. He looked down. They didn't recognize him, and somehow that hurt more. The world had moved on, but something inside Elias hadn't died. It was asking, not how do I win again, but what was I even playing for? And that question became the spark of his awakening. Elias left the city. With the last cash in his account, he boarded a bus to nowhere. Mountains, dust, and silence. He rented a small room in a forgotten town where the Wi-Fi barely worked. Maybe that was the point. Days passed in a blur of reflection and resentment. He noticed something strange. The people here had nothing, yet they smiled more. The baker who woke before dawn, the carpenter who hummed as he worked, the little girl who sold wildflowers outside his window. One day, Elias asked the carpenter, open quote, "Don't you ever get tired of doing the same thing every day?" The old man laughed, hands rough with decades of work. "Boy, tired? No, I rest every night knowing I made something real." Close quote. That word, real, stayed with him. For the first time, he realized that his wealth had been digital, fleeting, built on numbers that vanished as fast as they appeared. He began to study again, not charts, but himself. He read about the psychology of money, how humans mistake control for security, how the chase becomes the addiction, how peace cannot be purchased, only practiced. He wrote in a notebook, open quote, "Money is not freedom, it is a mirror of discipline, and discipline begins in thought," close quote. Weeks turned into months. Elias started working for the carpenter, not for pay, but to learn rhythm. The rhythm of patience, the rhythm of building something that lasts. And in that silence, he began to hear life again. Winter came softly to the mountain town. Frost kissed the windows each morning, and Elias's breath fogged the glass as he watched the sunrise over the hills. He hadn't looked at a stock chart in 6 months. He no longer woke to the buzz of market alerts, only to the rhythm of the carpenter's hammer. Steady, honest, alive. One morning, a traveler arrived, a quiet man in his 50s wearing a weathered coat and carrying nothing but a notebook. He stopped by the carpenter's shop and stayed for tea. The carpenter introduced him. Open quote, "Elias, this is Jonah. He travels the world teaching something called value psychology." Close quote. Elias raised an eyebrow. "Another lecture about getting rich?" Jonah smiled. "No, about why people confuse money with meaning." They walked together through the market square, the smell of bread and wood smoke in the air. Open quote, "You once built an empire," Jonah said. "You knew?" Elias asked. "Everyone has an empire. Some build it from gold, some from peace. Yours collapsed because it had no foundation." Close. Elias frowned. "So what's the foundation?" Jonah stopped, looking at a young boy carving a toy boat from scrap wood. Open quote, "Purpose. When money serves purpose, it multiplies meaning. When it replaces purpose, it consumes the soul." Close quote. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. Jonah's words looped in his head. He realized he had always chased numbers, not value. He'd built systems that extracted profit, not lives that created worth. In the following weeks, he began helping local traders, not to make them rich, but to make their work sustainable. He showed the baker how to track supplies digitally, the carpenter how to market his handmade furniture online. But this time, it wasn't about scale or speed, it was about service. Each time he saw someone's eyes light up with understanding, he felt something he'd never felt when his account was full: peace. He wrote again in his notebook, open quote, "True wealth is when what you earn aligns with what you give." Close quote. The townspeople started calling him the wise one with empty pockets. But Jonah said, "They're wrong. Your pockets aren't empty. Your heart is finally unburdened." Then one morning, Jonah was gone. No goodbye, just a note on Elias's table. Open quote, "When the world calls you again, don't run from it. Return not as a chaser of wealth, but as a keeper of wisdom." Close quote. Elias smiled, folded the note, and placed it inside his wallet. The same wallet that once overflowed with cash, now holding a single seed of truth. 2 years later, Elias returned to the city. The skyline hadn't changed, still glowing, still hungry, but he had. He walked the same streets where he once drove supercars, past the same towers where his name once gleamed on glass doors. No one recognized him, but this time, that anonymity felt sacred. He rented a small studio, filled it not with machines, but with people. Young dreamers, old workers, curious minds. He called it the House of Value. There were no investors, no flashy ads, no promises of get rich fast. Just one simple mission written on the wall. Open quote, "Teach people to build money that doesn't break their peace." Close quote. He began teaching the psychology of finance, how fear drives spending, how discipline builds freedom, how gratitude is the real currency of joy. He told them about his fall, not as failure, but as tuition. Open quote, "I chased success until success ran from me," he'd say. "The moment I stopped running, it found me again, quietly, dressed as peace." Close quote. His lessons spread online, reaching millions who were tired of hustle culture. His voice, once a whisper in chaos, became a beacon for balance. Then one evening, as he stood by the window watching the sunset, his mother called. Open quote, "Elias, I saw your interview. You've changed." "No, Mama," he said softly. "I finally became what you and Dad hoped for. Someone who knows the price of peace." Close quote. The screen faded to his reflection, older, humbler, lighter. He smiled and whispered the same question that had once haunted him. Open quote, "How far would you go to buy freedom?" Close quote. Then answered himself, open quote, "You don't buy it, you build it, one disciplined choice at a time." The story of Elias isn't about money lost, but value found. We all chase something, status, success, applause, forgetting that wealth without wisdom is poverty in disguise. If this story reached your heart, share it. Let someone else remember that peace is the highest profit. Because in the end, the richest person isn't the one who has the most, but the one who needs the least.